thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Faith. I'm a research associate here at Shamiri. So I can see that quite a number of us have joined. I assume by you joining the webinar, you're also pretty excited for the student poster presentations, and that's why we're here today. So like I said, my name is Faith. I am an associate here at Shamiri in the research team, and I'll be one of the people who will be taking you through this session about poster presentations, how to write a great abstract, and how a great visual abstract looks. And I'll be co-moderating this session with my colleague who will introduce herself next.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Rachel Kilonzo. I'm also a research associate here at Shamiri Institute. I hope this session will be informative for you guys.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So I'll just start by talking about the Shamiri Summit. By virtue of us being here, I know some of us have heard about the Shamiri Summit, and some of us have probably attended the Shamiri Summit before. So I think the first one was in 2023, and the last, we had one in 2024 as well, and this will be our third iteration. And the essence of Shamiri Summit is to not just talk about what we found out about youth mental health that year as Shamiri, but also to see what's happening in the landscape of mental health broadly in Kenya by interacting with other people who work in the sector and other people who also just have an interest in mental health and finding out, what's happening with the youth and how can we help them. And so specifically for this year, our theme is Wires and Signals. So this theme for the year is essentially we're supposed to be meditating or thinking about the systems that we're building and the messages that they are carrying and how that will affect the future that we are trying to build. So the systems that we have, are they carrying the right messages? So these wires that we have in place, so meaning the research that we have, the infrastructure that we're building, are they carrying the right message that will help us to build the right future for young people, essentially, okay? And so that's the theme for this year. And I think the major question that we'll be thinking about is when we're talking about the signals, in this case being mental health, being well-being, belonging, how are we building the right systems, or how can we build the right systems, but not just as Shamiri Institute, but also out there, the people who are doing the work out there, like you young people who have come and joined today's webinar. Are we building the right systems, and how can we improve them, and how can we support each other in that? So that's, I think, just a very general overview of the event. And in terms of details, it's going to be happening in November. So it will be from 9 to 5, it will be at Glee. And for you specifically who's joined here, probably as a student or a young researcher, the question might be, why should you participate? Why should you join the poster presentation and tell us about your research? So the first is awards, obviously. You might have seen on the website, but we will be giving awards to our top 3 participants. So the first person will get 50,000, the second will get 30,000, and the third person will get 20,000. But other than that, moving on to the other reasons why you should participate, you'll also get visibility and recognition. So by showcasing your research, like I said, we try to invite people who are working in other sectors in mental health and also mental health affiliated. So whether it's people who run programs, it's people in tech and who might be building tech things for research, and other just mental health experts, with not just organizations, but also psychiatrists and psychologists. So by showcasing your research, you'll be getting visibility, number one, with those people, and also recognition for the work that you're doing, and it might help to propel you and your research forward. It will also give you the opportunity to network with people, because all of those people who will be there, maybe there's an opportunity that you're looking for, or it's just people that you want to meet and bounce off ideas off of each other. That will also give you the opportunity for that. For professional development, you might learn quite a bit, not just from what we'll be presenting, but also from each other. By looking at the kind of work that other people are doing, you might learn quite a bit from that. And also just continuing to engage with people in the same fields. So I think these are just some of the great reasons why you should participate in this year's summit. So next, we'll talk about who is eligible for this poster presentation.
Ideally, for this section where you'll be submitting your posters, we are hoping to target number one, citizens of Kenya. Secondly, should be a student who's in a Kenyan university. First, okay, ideally we'd want someone who's studying psychology, but if there's someone who's not in the field of psychology, but feels that their research sort of is helpful when it comes to youth mental health and well-being and perhaps resilience. And all of this is when you look at the intersection between mental health and the field of tech or just any kind of research. You might not be a psychologist, you might come from another different field, but if your abstract sort of like falls or the abstract of your work sort of like falls under this particular topic of research, you're also welcome to submit the abstract. So this would mean ideally people, whether they're in undergrad, recently graduated students. We also welcome masters and PhD students and also early career researchers. So you want to look at just youth, mental health, their well-being, resilience, and how all of that sort of like can be meshed or merged into tech and mental health. So after that, we can now quickly move on to the abstracts.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. And as now we're moving into the meat of it and why we are actually here today. So right before we talk about the abstracts, I know a lot of you might have questions, so don't worry, we'll address all the questions at the end. So you can leave your questions in the chat and then we'll begin with questions that we'll see in the chat. And then now we'll go on to if people want to ask their questions by unmuting them up themselves and just asking them out loud, we'll move on to that. So I just wanted to make that note. Okay. So there are two kinds of abstracts that we'll talk about today, and you might have seen this in the call for applications. So the first is a written abstract. And abstracts in general are just, think of it like a summary of your research or a summary of your paper. So it has all the same components, but in a condensed format that can quickly tell somebody what drove you to want to research this, what did you want to find out, how did you do it, what did you find out, and what can we get from all of this. Because sometimes, like, research is interesting and everything that you might be trying to find out is very interesting, but not everybody might have the time to sit down and read like a 10-page or a 15-page paper. So this should be able to quickly and concisely give all of that information. And I think this is also in the call for applications or in the submission under the guidelines. So in a written abstract, you have the introduction, you have the objectives. Like I said, what were you trying to find out? What were you trying to achieve? The methods is just talking about how did you do it. The results is what did you find out? And the discussion is what should people take away from that? And I'll give you an example of a written abstract. So this is a written abstract from one of Shamiri's papers. This is just meant to give you an idea of how to write the abstract. We are not saying that it has to be exactly in this format. And the formatting should be similar, but you don't have to write it exactly like this. So the things that should be similar, for example, is your title. Every abstract should begin with a title telling us what were you studying. So in this case, for us, we were studying the effect of Shamiri, a layperson provided intervention, versus study skills, control intervention for depression and anxiety symptoms in adolescents in Kenya. So it tells you the interventions that were involved, what was being studied, and for who and where. So adolescents in Kenya. And our objective was to assess whether Shamiri, a 4-week layperson delivered group intervention that teaches all of those things, can alleviate depression, anxiety symptoms in symptomatic Kenyan adolescents. And with the objective, again, you'll notice, it will tell you for us, we were looking at the effect of one of our programs on depression and anxiety. So it tells you what the intervention was about, what Shamiri is very briefly, and it told you about who our population was, who are Kenyan adolescents. So in that one sentence, it's given you all of that information. And so the objectives, again, if you've written a paper, sometimes you can have like 3 objectives. You don't have to list them. You can write them just like this in one sentence. And the reason I say that is for most abstracts, if not all, they will have a word limit. For example, like 300 words is the limit. So you want to make sure you're maximizing the words that you're using. So next we have the methods. And the methods usually has a few components, and I'll point them out as we're going along. So for example, let me see. So methods, like I said, it's talking about how did you do it. So it has the location. So location for here, we did it Nairobi and Kiambu counties, and it was in 4 secondary schools. So that tells you the location, it tells you where exactly we did it. Next, we talk about adolescents aged 13 to 18 with elevated symptoms of, okay, let me just stop there. So adolescents 13 to 18, that's our population. So your methods should have that information as well. So you talk about, like I've said, you should talk about your population, you should talk about your location, who are you doing this with? And then now after we've talked about who are you doing with this with, the next thing is how did we do it? So we used standardized depression and anxiety measures. So for us, we typically use PHQ and GAD. For you, in your research, you might have used different tools and measures. This is where you'll talk about what you used. You're trying to give us all the information about how exactly did you go about this. And next, we talk about intent to treat analysis. So when you're talking about how you did it, it's not just when you went to the field. It's also talking about once we went to the field, after that we had gotten the information and that data, we planned to analyze it in this way. So you don't need to talk about the kind of analysis that you did in the methods, but if it's something that you have done and you use a very particular method, you can method of analysis, you can mention it here. And so for us, the reason we talk about recruitment taking part in June 2019 and follow-up data is because this was a long study. So you don't necessarily have to talk about all of these dates and give us all the dates when data was being collected and analyzed. This was particular to this study because, like you can see, it had different follow-up time points. If yours, you collected it, let's say once you went to a school or you went to maybe a class in a university and you collected the data, you don't have to give us all of the dates in the methods. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I know we'll ask questions about it later. And then, like I mentioned, so here, after we've talked about the tools, we also talk about the primary outcomes. So for us, what we talked about wanting to find out about is depression and anxiety. And so those were our primary outcomes. And then you can see that we talk about analysis again. So that's the methods section. In the method section, you can talk about as well if you got ethical approval, that's fine to talk about, but you don't need to talk about it in an abstract because that might take away from the amount of words that you have. The most important things that you can see here is who are you interacting with, where were you interacting with them, what were you collecting, maybe what tools did you use. and how did you go about it? So then now we go to the results. The results is, again, basically, what did you find out from this work that you did? So for us, we talk about, we had 413 adolescents, and that's our population. This could also go in the method section. They're talking about the who. You could also mention the numbers here or there. So I think a tip would be, if you information like, let's say, the population size or the sample size, if you mention it in the method section, don't mention it again in your results section, because you're just repeating information that you don't have the space to repeat it. And so here it talked a bit about the sample and how they were divided. So it talked about, we said the mean age was 15, and we talked about gender. So these are just the characteristics of the sample. So you can quickly talk about your characteristics. So age, gender, distribution of different types of demographic information, you can put that there. And then now go into whatever you are studying. What did you find out? What were your results? So here you don't want to just give us prose, give us like the actual data. So you analyzed it, what results did you get? So you don't have to give us all of this information like the Cohendy. If that's not something that you are looking at, it's fine. If that's not something that you have, you would have it, but you don't have to write it exactly like this. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to make sure that you're telling us the confidence interval and all of that. But we want to have an understanding of, for example, in this case, the reason that we're talking about this is what we said earlier, we wanted to compare Shamiri to the other intervention, which is study skills. So now that we've compared it, what did we find? So if we say that Shamiri showed greater reductions, we want to talk about were those reductions actually significant. And that's why you'll see we have this information. So the information here will depend on what you are studying. So the results section should not be too extensive, just very straight to the point. And then the discussion and the conclusion is now where you'll tell us about what you found out in prose. And that's the difference between the results section and the discussion and the conclusion. So the prose now actually going into, we found that Shamiri and study skills, they both reduced it, but Shamiri had a higher effect and a greater effect. This is where it will be. Don't put that in the results section. Okay. And I think so the discussion is just very short, talking about what did you find out from your results, and the conclusion is, okay, now that it is used, we found that Shamiri has a greater result. It might be useful in other settings, and it works. So that's the conclusion. I think now we'll move on to the visual abstract.
Okay, thank you, Faith. So just quickly about the visual abstract. So when you look at, for example, the written abstract, your word count was capped or is capped at 300 words. But if you remember, this is going to be a poster presentation and maybe not an oral presentation or a workshop or a symposium. So with the visual abstract, ideally what we want to do is for you to translate the 300 words that you have in your written abstract, or translate your entire research into a poster design. So for this, you can imagine you're not going to be putting the 300 words from your written abstract into your visual one, but ideally you'll find that there are certain things that will sort of appear in both cases. So ideally, you should have a title for that, for the visual abstract, which is going to be used for your poster presentation. The title, when you think about it, it should be quite, the font size should be the biggest font size, and it should be easily readable from a distance. Ideally, you'd want, when someone is across the room, they're able to sort of pick up a few words from your abstract in itself. So after the title, Your visual abstract should also have the design of your study. This will sort of like correspond to both the design and the method section corresponds to what we had in the written abstracts. So this again will just be talking about maybe the kind of participants that were in your study, the kind of methodology that you used to collect the data, and also sort of like the kind of analysis that you used to analyze the data that you collected, along with perhaps maybe the measures that you took, if it's PHQ, if it's a GAD, or any other measure of mental health. You should also include the results section just briefly, and you can add a reference section. This would be ideally what we would hope to see in your abstract. So from here, you can see that you will still have the title of the presentation, similar to what we had in the written abstract. It's the Shamiri layperson provided intervention versus study skills and all of that. So the section where you're seeing, for example, you have something to do with the population, the intervention, primary outcome settings. All of that is the method sections in the written abstract. Then again, after the method section, we'd expect you to sort of provide us with some of the findings. And ideally, you'll want your findings just to be brief, highlight the most fascinating things that you learned from your study. You don't need to tell us all the good things, but you can just pick out one or two amazing findings that you've got. And then there's the idea of references. Again, there is the idea of references. So when it comes to that, you can just either use just one reference or two references. Just try to keep it at a minimum. So when you think about your presentation, your visual or your visual abstract, what you're looking for is, I know what we've given you is something that is in landscape mode. We would like for you to give us an abstract that is going to be in poster. And I believe you are given some of the dimensions. So as you just think about it, sort of like have the design be in a poster kind of presentation. So we said about the title, methods, findings, and references. Those are the key parts. What you want to do or look out for is to avoid having sort of like a clunky kind of design in your abstract. I think some of the key things to look out for were also mentioned in your sort of like in your application, the Google form that you are sort of supposed to be filling. Faith?
All right. All of this information is still in, I think it's in the call for application. So the submission deadline for the poster presentations should be 15th October. And then the research team at Shamiri will be reviewing all your abstracts, and we'll do this between 16th and 24th of October. And then on the 24th, that's when we'll let you know if your abstract has been selected for presentation at the summit. So we'll have the ones whose abstracts will be selected will be coming to present the abstracts at the summit. That's where the actual now judging for the top 3 will happen. And also just to give other people a chance to also share their presentations and to share like their posters and their research and their work. So in as much as we'll only have the top 3 being awarded like the cash prizes, everybody who will come and share their presentations obviously will still get a chance to get their work out there, and we'll also reach out to you afterwards and see how we can also find ways of sharing your research even further. And so after you've let you know about the acceptance of your abstracts, we'll have a practice run from November 5th to 7th, so that everybody, I know that dates can get a bit confusing, so I want us to all have a chance to see that. Anyway, don't worry, this information, number one, is in the call for applications, but we'll also send out more communication after this with the link to this video, some of the resources that we've shared here today, as well as all of this information about timelines and everything. This is just for our discussion right now. So like I said, after the notification of acceptance, which will be October 24th, then we'll have a practice run through for everybody who will be coming to present in person. And this will be between November 5th and 7th. But we'll let you know about this as well. And then after that, on November 10th, we'll be printing your posters. So like I said, they'll be presented physically at the Shamiri Summit. And like Rachel was mentioning with the visual abstract, they will have to be like in portrait mode. They'll be printed, and that will be done by us. So this little bit of time should allow everybody to be able, in case there are last minute changes that you want to make, or in case we have feedback after we've already selected your poster, we'll give you some time to make it, and then we will print the posters for you. The deadline will be November 10th because we need some time to be able to print it. If you don't send it by then, you'll have to print it yourself. And then finally, the November 14th is when we'll be having the Shamiri Summit, and specifically the student poster session. So those are the timelines that we are working with. Again, we'll share everything, so don't worry about needing to take note of all of this right now. I think that is what we had to talk about. I don't know if we have any questions. Let me see if there's any question in the chat. Okay, so I see a question from Evelyn, which criteria will be used to choose the ones that are eligible? So I think first off, the number one criteria will be whether you have followed the guidelines that have been set out. So I know the guidelines they're already out there, and they are attached to the call for applications. So number one, have you followed the guidelines? Do you have everything? So for example, if you've said that your abstract should have an introduction, objectives, and all of these things, we've given you the guidelines, have you followed them? So we typically tend to get a high volume of applications. So I think right off the bat, that will be the first thing. And then the second thing will be the quality of how the abstract itself is written. So because if you have all of those things, that means that you've done some research. So it's looking at just the quality of the research. We've also given some guidelines for sort of like the thematic areas that we're looking at. So like wellness, I know there was like tech and well-being. Do they fall within the thematic areas that we are looking for? We'll also send some more information on what scoring criteria we'll be using after this, maybe within the week. But I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Rachel, in terms of criteria.
Not really. I think you've covered that, Faith.
And I think in terms of eligibility, we'd also talked about it, as long as you are, not that's for the research, but if it's for you, as long as you're a student and you've done some research, you're eligible. Can you send us the slides that come from Hilda? Definitely. So we'll send the slides and the other materials that we have talked about after this, which will be shared, I think, on an email. This is from Caroline. For the poster, and the reference is supposed to be drawn from the abstract. Go ahead, Rachel.
Ideally, you do not have to do that. You can use, for example, one reference that really governed or like was the highlight of your sort of like your literature when it came to coming up with your research to start with. So it does not have to be drawn from the abstract in itself. So it would be also amazing, for example, if you've already published your work and there are references for it, or you've already pre-printed it. So if that's already done, you can still use that particular reference. Will the exact dimensions for the posters be shared among the updates. Right now, I believe the dimensions were provided along with the Google Doc or the Google form that you are supposed to be filling up. So there was a section on guidelines. If you clicked on that, the link would lead you to the dimensions that are needed for the posters to start with. That was the answer from Lenovo, I believe so. But if you do want the dimensions, again, if you cannot find them, we can also share them again.
So I'm sharing the form in the chat as well, just in case you didn't see the form, stay in the chat, but in case you want to find it and more information, just search Shamiri Summit 2025. The website has all information about the Shamiri Summit, the theme, the poster presentations. It has this link, it has all the information. So I would suggest maybe starting from there. Is there a WhatsApp group? We don't have a WhatsApp group. I think if you'd like to communicate, that you can reply to the email that we'll be sending out with some of this information. I don't know if we have any other method of communication. Rachel or anyone else on the show, or Christine, if there's any other form of communication that people can utilize?
I think email would be ideal in this case, just for official purposes and to sort of like keep a track of any kind of communication that we're going to be having.
Yeah, so I mean, the email that we'll send out, and also I think we'll keep updating this information online, even like on LinkedIn, just in case you're not on the email threads. So yeah, email is how we communicate. Is there anybody who has a question and would like to ask it? You can just unmute yourself, just raise your hand if you don't want to type it in the chat. We can just give people a few minutes to either finish typing them up or just raise your hand. Go ahead, Karen.
Like, let's say I've never done the research before, but I'm interested. That is to learn and maybe contribute, like be part of the team to just see how it's done because I've never done it before. Like, can I get someone or maybe join a group or maybe like for the purpose of learning? Because I believe there'll be a next time and maybe it's when I'll participate. But as of now, I just want to learn. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's really great. I know some of us are students, and maybe, like you said, Karen, like you haven't done research before, but you'd be interested in it. I think the best forum for that would be just number one, coming to the Shamiri Summit. So from there, you'll be able to interact with people who do present their poster presentations and see the kind of research that they've done. And number two, you'll be able to also network with people who have been doing research or are doing research. We'll have some schools there, we'll have research organizations there, we'll have mental health organizations there. So you'll be able to also network with people in case you do want to learn from them or get an opportunity to work with them. But even on the Shamiri end, we will also be there. So number one, we do take on interns and volunteers from time to time. And I think our emphasis when it comes to like the internship and the volunteer program is we don't need you to have like a lot of research background, but you can come and join and learn from the research team and other teams. So also by coming to the summit, you can also apply via email, but you can also come and interact with us, and we can, I think, get good next steps from there. Anything you might want to add, Rachel?
No, just to emphasize what Faith has said, especially when it comes to networking, just if you can just show up during the Shamiri Summit, have conversations with people, you might find a certain area of research that is quite of interest to you, and you might just have find yourself sort of like finding someone who's willing to mentor you if it's something that you're really interested in. So just show up, talk to people during the summit. You might sort of like get a foot in the door when it comes to research.
Yeah, and I can see Christine has shared the email. Yeah, she's shared the email in the chat, and like she said, she will also share a recording link of the webinar when it's available. So she'll share the recording and any of the materials that we've used from here. So I see a question from Cruz James. Is it possible to have WhatsApp for much easier peer interactions as we get towards the summit? I think just because the essence of this is to get the poster presentations and the abstracts to be submitted so that now we can let you know who will have a chance to come to the summit and present their abstracts. I would say for now, the best way to communicate would be email, just because we are gauging them on the basis of the particular abstract and not as a group. If you guys, I don't know, I don't think maybe a WhatsApp group is something that we can organize on our end. However, if some of you know each other and would want to form a WhatsApp group, that would also be fine. But even coming to the summit, you might be able to now form those connections and form those groups later on. I hope that makes sense. If you have a follow-up question or a follow-up information or something you wanted to say about that, you can also just unmute or write it again in the chat. Other considerations for those who are not from Nairobi attending the summit. Rachel, you want to take that one?
Yes. Right now, especially when it comes to the poster presentation, what you're really looking at is, for example, if you're within Nairobi, okay, first of all, when it comes to the poster presentation, one thing you have to realize is that Shamiri is the one that's going to be printing out the posters. So we're going to sort of like be moving some of the costs from you as a presenter if you're chosen to do so. So when it comes to the cost of printing the posters, that's completely on Shamiri's end. However, when it comes to actually attending the summit in itself, especially if your poster is not selected, you're going to have to cover that for yourself. However, if your poster is selected, that is a conversation we're going to be having later on as we sort of try to navigate the logistics, and by the time we sort of like select the finalists or the people who are going to be doing the presentation on the 13th and 14th, we're going to definitely have a clear answer when it comes to whether or not your transportation is going to be covered. I think just one step at a time. Right now, you should really be concentrating on the poster and just seeing if we can get to accept your abstract.
Karen said, thank you so much. I must attend the summit. Can't wait to see you there, Karen. Please reach out in case of you have any questions regarding the posters and stuff. We'll see you there.
Jonathan asks, is it okay to have a topic that interweaves the three main themes you're seeking? Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's your research that you're sort of trying to showcase here. So it would be cool if you're able to sort of like interweave all the three themes. But even as you like aim to go for something big, remember that posters are always, or poster presentations are always simplistic in their nature. You want something that will sort of draw people to your poster, and you're able to communicate perhaps your findings in a short amount of time. Because remember, you just have sort of like a poster that is in a zero size, and you do not want it to be cluttered with words, and you just sort of want to bring out the most outstanding part of your research. So if you can sort of like shrink the three themes into one really cool, amazing finding, or one really cool, amazing research topic, that's still okay. It does not have to be only one theme.
Yeah, you're not going to be penalized for having like hitting all the main things. And even for the other people, even if you have only one theme, that's also not a problem. It's okay to have something that's just one thematically linked to one of the things that we've talked about. And it doesn't have to have exactly that topic, but I think something like well-being and mental health is very broad, and that's on purpose, and that's good. If it's just within that realm, please feel free to submit your abstract. Don't feel like it needs to meet all of the three themes that we're talking about. And I know some of you might also have like friends or colleagues or family who've also done research. Please feel free to let them know about this opportunity and to share these resources with them so that they are able to submit and that we can have more information and we can also learn from a wider group of people. So yeah, please don't be shy about that. My key takeaways, even as we end, would be please look at the guidelines, look at the call for submission, make sure that you're submitting everything within those guidelines. If you have any questions or anything that wasn't clear from this webinar, please feel free to reach out. We don't have any issues with people asking questions so that we can try to help you out as much as possible. And please keep track of the timelines. We will have, especially if we get a lot of submissions, we might not be able to be very flexible with the timelines. So please keep track of those and please share this opportunity and this information with everybody that you know who might be eligible for it. I can see a question from Eunice asking if a friend is doing a diploma in counseling psychology, can they submit their research? Rachel?
Yes, when you talked about like having eligibility being students in Kenyan university, it was not like strictly like undergraduate or bachelor students. Even diploma students are welcome. We just want to have people sort of like early career researchers, young people. We're sort of trying to give a platform to you people as young researchers to sort of like showcase your work. So diploma, still okay.
Yeah. And they don't even need to be doing a degree in psychology. We know, like we've seen, like one of the thematic areas is well-being and tech, and that can be very broad. So as long as you feel like your research is somewhere within those thematic areas, please feel free to submit. Don't throw yourself out of the race. And maybe it's something that would be applicable and is good research. Yeah. And yeah, I know some of you might have also graduated recently. I know we're having graduations going on right now. So if you've just graduated, but you did some research and you'd want to showcase it, please feel free to also submit it. I think our biggest emphasis is on young researchers. We say students because, that is like one of the broad categories, but just because you've recently graduated doesn't mean that you cannot submit your research. We just want research from young people. So yeah, I hope that is clear. Rachel, did you have anything else you'd want to add before we end?
No, just because we're wrapping things up, it's just sort of like thanking you guys for showing up, for asking questions. I hope we've been able to clarify a couple of things. And if some things are still not clear, you can always reach out to us via the email. And I hope I will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So just to echo what Rachel has said, thank you all so much for attending this webinar. I know we weren't even given like the longest notice, so I'm really happy to see all of you here. And I'm really excited to see the research that you guys are doing and to see your submissions and hopefully to see you at the summit. So again, even if your abstract is not accepted for the summit, please come to the summit. You'll get to interact with those whose abstracts will be accepted, but also you'll get to interact with so many other young people like you who are interested in mental health and research, and get opportunities and learn, and even maybe get to give us ideas. Just because your research is not, your abstract is not accepted does not mean that your research is not good. So maybe it's learning how to write the abstract. So please come. I'm really excited to see all of you there. Again, like Rachel said, in case of anything, please email us, and hope to see you soon. So thank you, guys.